Hello and welcome to CheersToFearYT, where we take horror films and turn them into drinking games. We're your two hosts. I'm Alex.
And I'm Tucker. Today we will be making a drinking game for the Dark and the Wicked, suggested to us by Bryan. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. Thanks a lot for the suggestion, and if you guys want to see anything on our channel, just comment it down below. Anyways, The Dark and the Wicked is written and directed by Bryan Bertino, the man responsible for the creation of the 2008 film The Strangers.
The Dark and the Wicked takes place on the secluded Straker family farm as Virginia, the mother to Louise and Michael, is taking care of her sick and dying husband, David. As David grows closer to death, his children come to visit, despite their mother saying that they shouldn't.
I told y'all not to go. I told you we were gonna.
Michael and Louise realize exactly why their mother said that they should not have come back. Now they only have each other to keep their spirits high and protect them.
This is one of the newest movies we have reviewed on our channel that we're actually going to be talking about spoilers for, since it's been over a year since it was released. It is easily available to stream on the horror app Shudder, so we recommend that you go watch the movie there and use our drinking rules that are posted on screen now. Without further ado, let's move on to an in-depth look at the rules.
So let's start with deaths for this movie. Obviously, you see a death, take a drink, nothing new. The total for this movie was 9.
Yeah, and this is higher than I expected. Like, I didn't really know what to expect a little bit, but it was a pretty high number for the type of movie that it is.
Yeah, I guess that's a perfect way of describing it. Like, for example, like a lot of the Conjuring movies, which are like kind of spooky ghost stories, doesn't have really a high kill count. I mean, obviously there were some fake outs, but yeah.
Yeah. Now moving on to rule number 2, obviously it's screams, cries, or yells whenever you hear when you take a drink, and this resulted in 21 sips. And this movie was kind of interesting the way that screams worked, I guess. There was almost none until the very end of the movie. I think it was maybe the last 30 minutes where they really picked up, but up until that point there was only 5 screams.
Like pretty much 5. Like there really was not a lot.
Yeah.
Which is super surprising, especially for a paranormal movie where people just jump and then the characters scream, whatever, you have it, jump scares. But it really only picked up towards the end. Honestly, they were just frightened the entire time, but tried to, I guess, almost reason with it in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, or just, like, they were basically shocked by it. They weren't really scared, screaming, or crying, really.
Yeah.
Until the very end.
It's because it was maybe a slow build-up for them. Like, it didn't all happen at once. It kind of slowly crept on them, I guess.
The next rule is pretty short. There's not much to talk about. So it's whenever you see a text card, you take a sip. The text cards are generally just stating like the day of the week, or I think even in some cases the title of the movie. But in any case, we only got 9 sips. Not much to say about that.
Yeah, so I'll move on to rule number 4. It's whenever you hear somebody singing. This gave us 5 sips in the end, and it's pretty unsettling when you hear it, honestly. And that's why we included it as a rule.
Yeah, especially when it's the mother singing who, I guess we can talk about spoilers now, who died.
Yeah.
Every trials and temptations, is there trouble anywhere?
For now, let's move on to rule number 5. Whenever you see goats, you take a sip. I guess one thing about the goats is we didn't add them as deaths, obviously, but that scene, just seeing the whole field of them just slaughtered, is pretty horrific, I'd say.
Yeah.
You see the one just kind of limping forward with just 3 legs. That's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, you don't actually see the death of the sheep. Like, you don't see it happening. You see the aftermath, which it still hits hard. It would be even worse if you actually saw it happening, but it still hits hard to see.
So even though it was just 9 sips, obviously that scene alone is pretty much, I'd say, one of the main reasons we have this rule. Obviously it's jumped quite a bit, so how could we avoid it? But yeah, I guess just seeing, if we were to see the whole like demon or whatever slaying the goats, I feel like that would have ruined it for me just a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Now moving on to rule number 6, it's whenever somebody is reading the mother's diary. This gave us 8 sips in total, and it doesn't really elaborate for the story or doesn't really serve a purpose for the plot. It kind of just alludes to their imminent doom, I guess. Like, it shows that it just shows their fate, I guess.
Yeah. It basically just kind of shows that they're fucked. There isn't really any clues or anything to that, which a lot of movies do have. But it's just weird that it doesn't have any of that. Yeah, it just kind of shows that pretty much they're fucked. It doesn't directly say it, but it's what it's implying for the most part.
Exactly.
I guess speaking of goats and them getting slaughtered, we have our next rule, which is whenever you see animal bones, such as like skulls or anything like that, the decor, you take a sip, which equaled out to 12 sips.
And sometimes it is harder to find if you're not looking for it, because like you said, there is decor where it's just a skull. And so you might miss it.
This is one of the rules that you could easily miss, I'd say.
Yeah, because it's not front and center, aside from when all the goats are slain. But just keep an eye out for the decor. Moving on to rule number 8, it's whenever something paranormal happens. And that gave us 22 sips. And this rule was the one that actually gave us the highest amount of drinks compared to the other ones. And it just gave us one more than screams, cries, and yells, which was 22. So it did a lot of the heavy lifting for the drinks in this drinking game.
Well, let's move on to another rule that really held the drinks in this movie back. If you hear howling at all, you take a sip. I feel like this was very kind of relevant to the plot in a way, but it wasn't super relevant. Obviously, it kind of indicated when there was hauntings happening.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it. It happened a good chunk throughout the film, but not an abundant.
Yeah, it only happened 5 times. So it did, like you said, it did have a bit of significance for the plot, just in terms of signifying when a supernatural entity was going to come. But not a lot of drinks for it. But moving on to another rule that didn't give us a lot of drinks, again, it's rule number 10, our last rule. It's whenever you see somebody smoking, and that gave us 7 sips. There's not a whole lot to say on this rule, honestly, other than, I guess, Louise started chain smoking after she started to feel more alone.
Yeah, and that just kind of shows that, like, the house is her and it's basically just her. Nobody kind of gives a shit besides, like, the nurse. But what is the nurse going to say? She doesn't own the house.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was our last rule, so let's move on to the total that we got for this movie, which is 107 sips. And 107 sips is equivalent to drinking 3.5 standard 12-ounce cans based on our 30 sip per can scale.
Yeah, so the drinking game was pretty easy, I'd say. It did pick up a little bit in the end, once, a lot more stuff started happening, like screaming, and like a lot more paranormal stuff too, and even deaths too.
Yeah.
So it was slow up to that point, but it did pick up in the end. So it makes it a little bit difficult, I guess.
Yeah. I guess in saying that, we were playing a lot of Scream drinking games as of recently, and slashers are pretty bad for drink totals.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of a break, if you want to say that, I guess.
Yeah. But
all in all, I feel like this movie was fairly easy.
Yeah, it's a good middle-of-the-road drinking game. Like, it's not too much, but it's not too few. It's 3.5. It's a good middle ground, I'd say.
Yep. So let's move on to the discussion. I feel like this is a very interesting movie to unpack.
Oh, yeah.
So such as the family being just damned from the start, pretty much.
Oh, yeah. It all comes back to that line that the nurse says in the beginning about how a soul needs love to keep it safe.
But there's love here. And a soul needs love to keep it safe.
Yeah.
It pretty much just comes full circle around like that. It all focuses on that line, basically.
Yeah. And it's really interesting that you say that, because in the family itself, there was pretty much no love. Throughout the entire film, no family member ever really hugs each other for the most part.
They don't.
Yeah, even Louise, I think, questions at one point, should I have hugged my mother after I entered the house or something like that? And the brother's just that probably wouldn't have changed anything.
Yeah.
Should have done something. Hugged her? Something.
Yeah. Because that would have made everything better, probably.
So, you can really see kind of this discontent with, I guess, the whole family. Nobody really cares about each other. Mm-hmm. Even dinner itself was just an awkward table conversation, even attempting to make small talk.
Yeah. And, obviously the mother it seems like she was constantly being haunted, or at least it's more than likely she was. During the whole time that her husband was sick, she's probably being haunted most of that time. And then the children came back, and they knew nothing about that, really. So it just kind of shows, again, how disconnected they are as a family, and how little her kids actually pay attention to them, I guess.
Yeah, and it's safe to assume that really none of them ever visited the mother, because just the way the family dynamic is, they all seem like strangers for the most part.
Yeah.
We should have talked to her!
Yeah, we didn't.
And I guess just talking about their dying father, that's the reason that they came back to the house. And the fact that their mom didn't want them there, it leads to question, like, how did they find out that he was dying? Who told them?
Yeah, because obviously the mother wouldn't. Maybe they just knew. I don't know.
Yeah, it could have been the nurse maybe told
It
them.
could have been the nurse,
but-
or it could have just been like, father can't talk right now, and then they're like, we have to visit. I don't know. Maybe something along those
something
lines.
fishy.
Something weird happened in between that. I don't know. It could have been the demon.
Yeah,
Who
and like,
fucking knows?
it's not something that needs to be explained, I guess. It's a minor nitpick that it's just something we noticed.
Yeah,
And-
I guess if you want to nitpick a little bit more, since we're on the topic, the biggest nitpick that I really have of the movie is just a couple of seconds. But that CG spider, I hate it so much.
Yeah.
Like, there's a point where I think it goes, like, over his face onto, what's the father's name? David's, like, shirt, and it just looks like it's not even there.
Yeah, well, it crawls out of his mouth so suddenly.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll just go back into the family talk, or some of the characters in the family, I guess. We'll talk about Michael a little bit. It's kind of made out that he is the strongest characters, I'll put in air quotes, because he has a wife and kids, which is his main reason for leaving, because he says that's all they have left.
Yeah.
Even though his sister and father are right there in the
Yeah.
house with him. And sure, they don't have a good relationship. Obviously, they don't have a tight family bond or anything, but it's kind of just a slap in the face to his sister right there in front of her that, you know, she's not a part of his life.
Yeah, and I guess in saying that, we can move on to Louise. I feel like is kind of the opposite. It seems like she has pretty much no one, which is really weird that she's so disconnected from the family then. Obviously, it feels like she wants to kind of make amends, like, towards the end of the movie, with her trying to, I guess, take care of the father now since the mother's passed. Like, she's going to be the one to sleep in the bed so the nurse doesn't have to spend the whole night there.
Yeah.
I'll stay in here. Overnight. I can do it. If you show me.
I just think you.
This is what they wanted.
I feel like it's just her kind of turning a new leaf, wanting to bond, which is probably why she doesn't die in the beginning, because it proves that she tries to love her father, her brother, but the brother obviously wants pretty much nothing to do with her. I mean, he's smart for leaving, though, we'll say that.
Yeah, he is. Doesn't ultimately end out right for him, but you do kind of see Louise starting to care a lot more about her family.
Yeah.
Like, she probably deep down always did care. She was just maybe scared to be a part of it, or like, I don't know, she just thought she wasn't able to be a part of it.
I guess it's significant to also note that in the final scene, she was running away from the house and she decided to turn back to not leave her father.
Yeah, and that point when she did leave is kind of when the point that he started dying, her father. And the way I kind of looked at that whole situation was she was leaving that situation, so it was kind of an implication that her love was kind of leaving the picture, where her dad, you know, his soul no longer had love given into it from Louise, so that's why he started dying, is the way I looked at it. And then she comes back ultimately realizing, like, no, I can't leave, I still love my dad or whatever.
Yeah, she tries to kind of redeem herself for not being there in the first place.
Yeah, it's kind of too late at that point. He's already basically dying.
Yeah.
Now that that's all out of the way, what's your overall thoughts about this movie?
I thought it was really well done. There was a lot of nitpicking that we obviously did. I mean, just a few things, but those were very tiny, if any.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, it had a really good premise. I feel like it was pretty unique. Great execution, pretty enjoyable for the most part. It had this overall sense of dread, which I really don't see a lot in movies anymore.
Yeah,
There's
I
always
agree.
like some sort of glimmer of hope, but in this there was basically none.
Yeah, I agree completely, and it did feel gloomy throughout the whole movie because of the way that it looked and just, you know, the atmosphere that they set, like we mentioned. And yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I thought it was a really fun movie to watch. It was super engaging throughout the whole thing, despite there only being a few characters.
Yeah.
And I guess we didn't talk a lot about the nurse. We didn't mention her, but even the nurse was a good character to have in the film, I felt. And she didn't play a huge role, but she was the one who kind of set the film up by saying the quote that we said in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. So now, the moment you all been waiting for, let's move on to the Darwin Awards, where we award one not-so-lucky nominee this award. This award goes out to a character that made a stupid decision that resulted in them getting killed, somebody else getting killed, or simply resulting in something happening that could have been easily avoided. This award can also be given out to a character that is just plain dumb. Here are the nominees.
Today's first nominee is the nurse, for not leaving at any time. She knew very well that there was something evil haunting that house, and she could have up and left at any point. However, since she did not, it led to her death.
The only other nominee we have is Michael. Yes, he did end up leaving the family farm after he knew that if he didn't, he was going to die, but slit his own throat without a second thought. He knew that the demon was making hallucinations, so he could have at least checked out to see if his family was actually there, or even go back to the farm to help out his sister.
And the winner is Michael. He really should have just went back home and tried to save his sister, and even if he attempted to do that, he would have ran into his family that just pulled up.
And with all that being said, we hope you enjoyed our look into Dark and the Wicked, suggested to us by Brianna Positek. If you ended up playing the game alongside the movie, or if you have any other feedback or suggestions, let us know in the comments below. Also let us know in the comments a movie that you would like us to make a drinking game for.
Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss next week's episode, where we are going to be making a drinking game for Creep. If you want to check out our most recent video, click on the box on the top right. Or if you want to see a playlist of all the drinking games and movies we review, click on the box below it. Thanks for tuning in, and this is us saying, cheers to fears.
He's not out there. He's already here.